We are obsessed with the visible. When we think of ancient Egypt, our minds immediately fly to the Giza plateau. We see the Sphinx, the Great Pyramid, the tourists taking photos in the sun. We are taught that this is the pinnacle of human achievement in the ancient world. But this is a distraction, a sleight of hand performed by history. While the world looks at the pointed stones of Giza, the true wonder, the structure that ancient historians claimed was the key to the entire civilization, lies forgotten, buried under 60 miles of mud and silence to the south. This is not a conspiracy theory born on the internet. This is a historical fact recorded by the most trusted eyes of antiquity. Herodotus, the Greek historian who walked the earth in the 5th century BC, stood before a building so immense, so complex, and so terrifying that he wrote, "I have seen it, and it is beyond words." He continued saying, "If all the walls and other great works of the Greeks could be put together in one place, they would not equal this labyrinth." Think about that. He saw the pyramids, he saw the temples, and yet he dismissed them as inferior to what lies beneath the sands of Hawara. To understand the labyrinth, we must understand the mind that conceived it. It was built during the 12th dynasty by the pharaoh Amenemhat III. This was not a primitive time. It was the golden age of the Middle Kingdom. Amenemhat was not interested in simple tombs. He was an engineer king. He obsessed over the Fayum Oasis, a region fed by a branch of the Nile. He built massive hydraulic works to control the flooding of the river, turning the desert into a garden. But his greatest project was the labyrinth. It was constructed not just as a burial site, but as the administrative and religious center of the entire nation. Herodotus described the layout in specific mathematical detail. He wrote of 12 covered courts with massive gates facing each other. 6 gates faced the north and 6 faced the south. A single unbroken wall surrounded the entire complex. It was a city within a building, a place where the nomes, the districts of Egypt, would gather to settle disputes and offer sacrifices. It was designed to unify Egypt and to intimidate it. The structure was divided into 2 distinct realms, mirroring the Egyptian belief in life and the afterlife. Herodotus wrote, "There are 3,000 apartments in total. 1,500 are above the ground and 1,500 are below. The upper rooms were open to visitors and officials. Herodotus was allowed to walk through them. He described baffling intricacies of the passages, the windings through the courts, and the sheer overwhelming size of the stone roofs. He wrote of walls covered in carved figures and halls lined with pillars of white stone, perfectly fitted together without mortar. But then there was the underworld. When Herodotus asked to see the 1,500 rooms beneath the ground, the keepers of the labyrinth refused. They blocked his path. They told him that the lower level was sacred ground. It contained the sepulchres of the kings who built the labyrinth, and, more disturbingly, the tombs of the sacred crocodiles. This was not a place for the living. It was a machine designed to protect the dead from the chaos of time. We must pause to understand the crocodiles. The Fayum region was the center of the cult of Sobek. In the ancient Egyptian religion, Sobek was the god of the Nile, of fertility, and of military prowess. But he was also a god of terror. The labyrinth likely served as a breeding ground and a tomb for these beasts. Imagine the atmosphere of the lower levels. Pitch black darkness, the smell of incense mixed with the musk of reptiles. Long, winding limestone corridors echoing with the sound of water and the movement of creatures. Strabo, the geographer who visited centuries after Herodotus, described the ceiling of the labyrinth as being made of single stones of such massive scale that no machine today could lift them easily. He noted that at the end of the labyrinth lay a pyramid, the dark, mud brick pyramid of Hawara, serving as the tombstone for this massive underground city. It was a complex designed to confuse intruders, a psychological weapon as much as a physical barrier. So here's the question that haunts every honest archaeologist. How does a building larger than the Karnak and Luxor temples combined simply vanish from the face of the earth? For 2,000 years, the official story has been one of destruction. In the Roman period, the site began to be used as a quarry. The chaotic layout of the labyrinth made it difficult to dismantle, but over centuries, the incredible white limestone columns and red granite walls were stripped away to build local villages and Roman cities. By the time Flinders Petrie, the father of modern archaeology, arrived in 1888, the surface was a disaster zone. Petrie found chips of limestone and a vast bed of mortar. He concluded that the labyrinth had been completely destroyed. He excavated through the sand, hit a layer of rock, and declared there was nothing left. But Petrie made a critical error, a mistake that would hide the truth for another century. He assumed the rock layer he found was the natural bedrock foundation. He didn't realize that the floor he was standing on was actually the ceiling. The truth remained buried until 2008. A team of Belgian and Egyptian researchers named the Mataha Expedition arrived at Hawara. They were led by the artist and researcher Louis de Cordier. They didn't come to dig with shovels, they came to see through the earth. They utilized the highest frequency, deep penetrating ground radar available at the time. They scanned the area south of the mud pyramid, exactly where Herodotus said the labyrinth stood. The data that came back on their monitors was shocking. Beneath the chaotic, muddy surface of the oasis, the radar revealed a perfect artificial grid. They found walls, several meters thick, running in cardinal directions. They found a colossal stone plate at the foundation level, spanning an enormous area, proof of the shield Petrie had failed to penetrate. But most importantly, beneath that stone plate, the geoscanning showed cavities, huge, hollow spaces. The grid pattern matched Herodotus's description perfectly. The data suggested that while the roof may have been damaged, the 1,500 underground rooms are still there, intact, sealed by the mud. This brings us to the most controversial part of the story, the connection to a lost human history. Why is the finding of the labyrinth so dangerous to mainstream history? Some believe it connects to the Hall of Records. The American mystic Edgar Cayce famously predicted that a secret library would be found in Egypt, containing the history of the lost continent of Atlantis and the true origins of human civilization. Cayce specifically claimed this hall would not be under the Sphinx, as many assume, but near a water source. The labyrinth sits right next to the Bar Yusuf Canal. If the labyrinth contains texts from before the Great Flood, or evidence of advanced technology used to move those massive ceiling stones, opening it would rewrite the textbooks. It would prove that our timeline of history is wrong. You would expect the Mataha Expedition's discovery to be on the front page of every newspaper. You would expect a massive excavation. Instead, we got silence. Shortly after the results were published in a scientific journal in 2008, the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities halted the project. Zahi Hawass, the head of antiquities at the time, dismissed the findings. He forbade any further scanning. He forbade any digging. The official excuse is the water table. They claim the underground chambers are flooded with salty water from the canal and that digging would destroy the ruins. But modern engineering can pump water. We build tunnels under oceans. Water is an engineering problem, not an excuse to abandon the greatest discovery of the ancient world. So, the labyrinth waits. It lies just a few meters beneath the feet of local villagers, hidden in the dark, guarding its 3,000 rooms. Is it just a tomb for crocodiles? Or is it the archive of a lost humanity? Until the doors are opened, we are left only with the words of Herodotus, echoing from the past. It is beyond words. What do you think is hiding down there? Let me know in the comments below.